Father Rector, Mr. Mayor, where is he? Yes, distinguished guests, eminent faculty, beloved students, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, saints and sinners. Did I leave anyone out? On the 2nd of June this year, at 12:04 p.m., I received the following email message from a certain Natalia Havriviv of the UCU Journalism Department, and it read, "Dear Sean, in the attachment you will find the copy of the letter of invitation to deliver the ceremonial address at the celebration of the School of Journalism in September. We kindly ask you to think about the topic of your speech." Well, I read those words, ceremonial and celebration, and so I'm thinking something very formal, so I find my best tie and my best jacket, and I start thinking about the topic for my speech. Now, I was on my way from Myanmar, I was going to Tanzania, so I had many things to think about, and it took me a month to respond. But in that month, many things happened in the world that made me think. On June the 30th, in a very prominent Asian nation, a new president came to power. He was sworn in, swearing, and I quote, that unfriendly journalists would not be exempted from assassination. According to International Federation of Journalists, his country is the second most dangerous country in the world for journalists. Ask me what the first is, and it's not the Vatican. Never mind. I discovered for myself, because I was in the Philippines last week, and I was in Davao, where a bomb went off outside the same university I was teaching at. So that was food for thought. Then, on the 1st of July, it became quite obvious to the world who the Republican Party candidate was going to be in another country's upcoming presidential election. And again, as far as journalists are concerned, I quote, he has said, "I would never kill them, but I do hate them." And if elected president, he has promised to introduce tougher libel laws so people can sue journalists for what he calls purposely negative and horrible stories, and so that the same people who sue the journalists can make, quote, a lot of money, unquote. You will notice that I'm not using names. It's an old Irish Catholic tradition. You name the sin, but not the sinner. The third example is this incredible thing on June the 24th called Brexit. Can someone in the room please explain what happened? And yet again, journalists came under fire for what they were called, and I quote again, simplistic coverage of the Brexit vote, for allegedly helping to disseminate distortions like how the European Union determines the shape of Britain's bananas, instead of helping people, in the words of one BBC correspondent, to work out what was true. And so here I am today talking to the journalism school on this very auspicious occasion, and I'm thinking, what on earth can I say that is useful, that is good, and that adds something to an understanding of what it means to be a journalist? And why, as we said in our masterclass this morning, two of the great criteria of being a good journalist are to be curious and to be courageous. Because when you try to tell the truth, people don't want to hear what you have to say. And so I started thinking, is there anything new in that? I come from Italy. We have a very ancient tradition, as do you. And I don't know about Ukraine, but in the Italian tradition, when a messenger brought bad news to a monarch, 9 times out of 10, he lost his head there on the spot. That didn't change the truth of the message if the monarch didn't like it, but it did somehow make the monarch feel better. And sometimes when I look at what the media is feeding us through our algorithmic internet bubbles, it seems to me that the truth is being destroyed just so that we can feel better. And so I asked, what could I say to you that would make you feel better about being a journalist? And so what I did was, I did what any good journalist can do. I called my friends. Journalists, oh, by the way, parenthesis, important tip, journalists need friends. You never know when they could be helpful. And friends, if they're good friends, will always tell you what you need to know, not what you want to hear. So I called Bogdan Voron and Artur Kornienko and Oleksiy Kovalenko and Ostap Yarish and Olya Kalinova and Petro and Oksana and Katarina and Nadia and Irina. They've all done internship programs, and they truly are friends. And they said to me, please don't lecture us. Please don't come and moralize. Don't tell us the things that we already know. Don't rehash the front page of The Economist and Time magazine, where we can read for ourselves the art of the lie, post-truth politics in the age of social media, or why we are losing the internet to the culture of hate. Please note that's not a question, it's a statement. Why we are losing the internet to the culture of hate. Please don't come and tell us things that we already know or we can find elsewhere. So I said, well, what can I tell you then? And they said, come and tell us about you. So here I am. This is me. My name is Sean, and it's my Italian tie. And I have two sons, one of whom is in journalism, and I have been working in the Vatican for 40 years. That's 40, not 14, huh? 40 years. Under 5 popes. Five is a magic number. We talked about 5 this morning. Huh? 5 is the number of years of the journalism department. 5 is the number of popes I have worked for. 5 is the number of communication. Have you ever looked at yourself? Huh? You have 5 extensions on your body. You use 5 senses to communicate with the world. So there are all these wonderful connections, and any communicator knows there is no coincidence. Everything is connected. Can I tell you a secret? Can I tell you a secret? Okay, it's off the record, huh? This is off the record. Now, it may, depending on where you stand, you see, if you're 20, you go, oh my God, 60, he's about to die. Huh? If you're anywhere above 70, then you go, oh, please, what 60? You're a baby, what do you know? But there's something about these round numbers. Anything that has a 0 on the end, it makes you stop and think. Apart from the fact that your boss is saying, oh, so you're 60, huh? So thinking about retiring yet? And you go, really? No, I'm not. Well, you should be. And your doctor is saying, 60, huh? Better come in every 6 months for your heart check, heart attacks. We don't want any of that to happen to you. And yes, and your ex-girlfriends are going, 60, oh, please, forget, you're over the edge. So it does make you stop and think. And you say, what have I learned? What do I know? What can I give you that is added value? What is it that you need to hear? There are only 2 things. I have learned what I know not through extraordinary master's programs like you get at this university. I have no PhD in communications. I just do what I do. I am who I am. Most of what I learned through being, not through doing. I was born in a place called Cape Town in South Africa. Cape Town, if your body is the world, Cape Town is your big toe. You can't go any further. You go any further, you fall off the edge. In South Africa, I learned there is no such thing as black and white. My family is Irish. My Irish parents and family taught me there is such a thing as good and evil. Working with 5 popes, I learned we are all saints, we're all sinners, but who am I to judge? In the end, the 2 things that I can offer you are these. How can we be good? How can we be useful? Being useful means you're able to bring people together, to create community, to create unity, understanding, where there is division and confusion. And what better profession to do that with than media and journalism and reporting? Bringing people together, that is useful. It is a world that is built more and more on division and confusion and lies and gossip. Be useful. Use your skills, your talents, those wonderful videos that we saw, to bring people together on a horizontal plane. This is being useful. Being good means to lift people up. There are so many people who are forgotten. There are so many people who are invisible. There are so many people who are pushed into the margins of society. The poor, the refugees, the disabled, the aged. Lift people up. Bring them to a higher understanding, to a dignity that they did not have. Did you see what I just did? What picture did I just draw? Did you see? Were you watching? A journalist listens and hears, looks and sees, touches and feels. What did I draw? A cross. Only faith can give you that added dimension. Only belief in something greater and bigger. The same belief and the faith dimension that you are given at this extraordinary university can give you that added value that sets you apart, that makes you special. One story and then I will leave you. May I have one story? One story. Last year, I was in a country called Uganda. I know you study geography in Ukraine. There are other universities I teach. I won't say which ones. Name the sin, never the sinner. Where the students can't even name the capital of their own country they live in. Never mind. Uganda is in Africa. It's in Central East Africa. It's on Lake Victoria. And I was working in the northwest corner of Uganda, bordering with a place called Sudan in the north and Congo on the west. I was there to help build community radios. I work at a radio station, a multimedia. In fact, we're much more convergence media, but radio to me is still very important. And I was there to help build and create these community radios. Community radio in Africa is exactly what it says. You go out into the village with a generator and a microphone, and the whole village comes. It's an event. And you sit down and you interview people, and you say, "Madam, does your husband still beat you?" And she says, "Yes, he does. Every night when he comes home drunk." And people are shocked because no one has ever asked that question before. And community radio becomes something powerful, empowering, creating community, lifting people up. And I wanted to visit a refugee camp in this area. There are many refugee camps in northern Uganda because refugees come in from South Sudan, from the Congo. There are wars happening there. It's a very difficult place. It is such a difficult place that in that area of Uganda, in their local language, There is no word for hope. No word in the language for hope. So there I visited this camp. Have some of you been to a refugee camp? Have you ever visited a refugee camp? You need to visit a refugee camp if you haven't. First thing you notice when you're in the refugee camp, there are no men, there are no young men, there are no males over the age of 16. Why are there no men? Because they're either fighting or dead. The next thing you notice is there are no elderly people. Why are there no elderly men or women? Because they couldn't run fast enough. The next thing you notice is that the women are doing everything. They're making the fires, they're cooking the meals, they're digging the latrines, they're doing everything. The children, you will see, they're either babes in arms, or again, no children of an age where they would be too heavy to carry or not able to run when the rebels or the guerrilla fighters come into the village and start shooting and burning. And then under a tree over there, you see the young adolescents, the young teenagers, 12, 13. I'm a daddy. I love my children. I love children. So you go over to the tree and you sit down under the tree, and with the help of the interpreter, you do what you do when you're with young people. And you say, so what's your name? So where are you from? I'm from here, I'm from Congo, I'm from there. And then they say, what's your name? Sean. Where are you from? And I go, yeah, they're going to know where Rome is. I go, Rome. And they go, where the Pope lives. And how would you know the Pope lives in Rome? And they go, yeah, we know, because we listen to his voice on the radio. Now this is a refugee camp, there is nothing there, nothing. I say, can I see this radio? Sure. They take me to this little hut, and there's a little black box in the hut, and it's a wind-up radio. It's something United Nations used to hand out years ago. It runs on a dynamo, and so you can wind it up, and then it runs for a couple of hours. It doesn't need batteries or electricity. And there's a wire going from the radio up into the tree. That's the antenna. And they say, that's our radio. That's our connection to the world, and that's where we listen to the Pope's voice. And it's then that I realize they're listening to my programs, the programs that I produce in the Vatican, in Rome, the programs that are being rebroadcast on the community radio, they're listening to. And they say, do you know the Pope? And I say, well, yeah, kind of. I travel with him sometimes, and yeah. Can you give him a message? Of course, I say. Can you tell him to keep talking about us? Because whenever the Pope talks about us, we feel less invisible. And so when I got back to Rome, I did. And if you listen carefully, you will hear Pope Francis often speaks about refugees. And whenever he does, I hope that my friends in that camp feel less invisible. I tell you that story because whatever you do as a journalist or as a media professional, however small you think your contribution is, you may never know who is listening and what is changing because of that small thing you do. And what is good and useful about being a communicator and a journalist? Well, you bring hope to the hopeless, you give a voice to the voiceless, and most of all, you make what is invisible visible. Grazie and God bless you.